Have you ever, like, I don't know, been in that situation where you're trying super hard to speak another language and it feels like, honestly, your brain just like completely shuts down?
Yeah.
I was in Paris, I guess it was a couple months ago, and I was trying to ask for directions to the train station. And, well, let's just say that my really bad miming skills got a serious workout. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
It made me think, like, how cool would it be to just, like, think in English, you know?
Yeah.
No more, like, mental translations, just straight up, you know, effortless talking.
Right, right.
And guess what? That's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
We've got this guide. It's called How to Start Thinking in English, and I am so ready to dig into this with you.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think we've all had those moments with the whole miming thing in a foreign country.
Oh, totally.
But it really shows how important, like, one of the most important things about learning a new language, it's so much more than just, you know, memorizing a bunch of words and grammar rules.
It really is.
It's like you can, like you were saying, you knew the words for train station in French, right?
Yeah.
But to actually put them together, like, in a way that makes sense and do it, like, without taking forever, it can feel impossible.
Impossible. And that's where I think this whole thinking in English thing comes in.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely. The guide goes into, like, why moving from translating in your head to just thinking is so important for being fluent. It's about making English feel as natural to you as your first language. So you're not stuck doing that thing in your head where you have to, like, translate everything every time you want to say something.
Right. Like, I don't want to have my mental French to English dictionary out while I'm, like, you know, pointing at invisible trains.
Exactly.
So no more of that, please. Sign me up for whatever this is.
Very small chuckle.
Okay, so let's get into this guide. It obviously says fluency is a good thing, of course. But what else makes thinking in English so game-changing? What else does it say?
Well, it talks about how it's like unlocking this deeper level of, I guess, mastery over the language.
Okay.
It's not just about speaking faster, but also about how confident you feel when you speak. You know, imagine speaking English easily, like, without even really thinking about it.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Without all that effort.
Yeah.
The words just come out smoothly.
Instead of thinking about all the, like, rules, you can actually, like, focus on what you're saying.
Exactly.
And who you're talking to.
It's all about connecting with the other person.
Exactly.
And beyond that, it even says that thinking in English helps you kind of just absorb the grammar naturally.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you start to get a feel for what sounds right instead of having to, like, analyze every single sentence in your head, you know?
Yeah.
And it can even make you better at understanding English too, like, both when you hear it and when you read it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not just learning the language, you're living in it, kind of.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's about making English a natural part of how you think, not just a skill you use when you need to.
Right. Okay, I love that.
Not just another tool in your toolkit, but, like, integrated.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah.
So the guide starts off with this idea of starting simple, which, like, I get it, but what does that actually mean? What do you do?
Well, one thing it suggests is taking, like, everyday objects around your house and, like, putting labels on them, but in English. So you could put a sticky note that says door on your door, table on your table, that kind of thing.
Isn't that, I mean, that seems really simple. Does that actually work?
It might seem too easy, but it's actually, there's a lot of, like, science behind why it works. It's about building connections in your brain. Like, think about it. When you see a door, you don't have to think, okay, what's the word for that? You just instantly know it's a door.
Yeah, you just see it and you know.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to do with English.
We want you to see a door and just think door, not the word in your native language. And this labeling thing, it seems really simple, but it actually helps your brain make those connections faster.
So you're basically, like, rewiring your brain to think in English, one sticky note at a time.
Exactly. You're building those connections that make English feel automatic, not something you have to work so hard at remembering.
Oh, okay.
Think about it like learning a new dance move. At first, you have to think about every single step.
Right.
But then when you've practiced enough, your body just kind of knows what to do without you thinking about it so much.
It just flows.
Exactly.
Okay, it's like you're really building that foundation in your brain.
Yeah.
So moving on in the guide, though, it also talks about this whole internal dialogue thing.
And honestly, that makes me think about, like, narrating my life out loud, which, you know, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I get it.
Like, am I the only one who thinks that's a little weird? Or is that just me?
I don't think it's that uncommon. Actually, If you think about it, we kind of do it already.
Really?
Yeah. Like, how many times have you, like, thought through a conversation before you have it?
Oh, all the time.
Especially a tricky conversation, right? Like, in your head, you go through the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
So this is basically the same thing, but you're doing it in English.
Oh, so it's kind of like giving yourself like a little practice arena, but for English. That's interesting.
Exactly. And just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
The guide talks about how it helps you get used to creating sentences in English without overthinking every little thing.
Okay, that's good because I definitely overthink it.
Yeah, it's like a safe space to make mistakes and try things out.
Without anyone like judging you, except maybe your own brain. But that's a whole other thing.
Very small chuckle, exactly.
But eventually you'd have to actually talk to someone in English, right? Like that's the goal, yeah.
Oh, for sure. This isn't about replacing real conversations, but it's more like a stepping stone.
Okay.
It helps you get more comfortable and fluent, so you're more ready when those opportunities to speak come up.
Yeah, you'll be ready. That makes sense.
Exactly. You're building up your skills beforehand.
Okay. So we've talked about sticky notes. We've talked about narrating our lives. What else does the guide recommend?
Well, this one's a little more fun, at least I think so. They suggest watching English TV shows and movies.
Oh, yeah. With subtitles, right? I've heard that's good.
Exactly. Subtitles are key here. And I think a lot of people think it's about, like, translating word for word.
Oh, I've definitely done that, where you're just reading the subtitles.
But it's really not about that. It's more about starting to pick up on the natural rhythm of the language, how sentences flow together.
So it's more about the sound of it than the individual words.
Yes, exactly. Imagine learning a musical instrument. You wouldn't start by analyzing every note on the page.
No. You'd listen to how it sounds all together.
Exactly. You'd listen to the melody, the rhythm, and that's what watching with subtitles can do for your English.
You're like absorbing the language.
Exactly. It's like passive learning, but in a really good way. So don't get too caught up in translating every single word. Just try to follow along with the overall flow.
Okay. So it's like all these things build on each other, right?
Right.
You start with the basics, then you're talking to yourself, and then you're like basically bathing in English with movies.
It's a process for sure.
It's a journey. And speaking of journeys, this next tip from the guide is a little scary to me, but I kind of want to try it.
Okay, what is it?
It says, speak out loud.
Oh, yeah, that one can be intimidating.
Intimidating is a good word. The guide suggests practicing English in front of a mirror, and honestly, depending on the day, that sounds like either a confidence booster or like a horror movie.
I can see that.
Like, what if I start talking and like my reflection answers back in perfect English?
Very small chuckle. I don't think that'll happen.
You know, it's like, how do I make that feel less awkward like I'm back in high school drama class warming up?
Yeah.
Any tips?
Well, the mirror thing, it's actually a good thing, honestly. Yeah. It's like you can try things out, make all the mistakes you want, and nobody's watching.
It's like a judgment-free zone for English.
Exactly. It's just you and the mirror, and trust me, your reflection has seen worse.
That's a good point.
And one thing that helps, the guide mentions it too,
okay,
is to pick, like, just one thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, super complicated or anything. Just talk about, I don't know, what you did today, something you read, or even just summarize a movie you like,
So it's about getting used to hearing yourself speak in English, even if it's just to the mirror at first.
Exactly. You're training your brain and your mouth to work together.
It's funny. It's like learning a language is kind of like learning anything else,
So.
Like if you think about music or sports, it's all about practice.
Yeah.
Right? You got to practice to get better, and sometimes you just got to sound kind of bad before you sound good.
That's true. It takes time.
It does. It does.
And patience.
Speaking of which, this guide is big on consistent practice, which I get it, but like, how do you stay motivated,
Yeah.
when you'd rather do like anything else than open your English journal?
I think, honestly, the key is to just make it a regular part of your life.
Instead of it being something you have to do.
Yeah, like not a chore.
Right.
Because even small things can make a difference. The guide mentions that too.
So I don't have to like write a whole novel in English every day?
No, not at all. Start small, maybe just a few sentences in your journal, something you noticed that day, even just writing your shopping list in English, it all counts.
It's about building those habits.
Exactly. It all adds up over time.
Oh, it's like that whole like micro habit idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if you just do a little bit every day,
Yeah.
it makes a difference.
Exactly. And don't forget to, be proud of yourself for the progress you make, even the small wins. Yeah.
Celebrate the small victories?
Yeah. Every sentence you speak, every time you understand a little more English on TV, those are all good things.
They're all steps forward.
Exactly. Each step gets you closer to fluency.
This has been great. I've learned so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's really cool to see how many ways there are to train your brain to think in English.
It's definitely a process, but it's so worth it.
I agree. So for everyone listening, think about a time when, you struggle to say something in English. Now imagine if you could go back and try it again, but this time you have all these tools and techniques in your back pocket.
That's a great visual.
It's like you've leveled up your language skills. Maybe you could finally order that croissant with confidence or, whatever your English goal is.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless.
Until next time, everyone, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep unlocking your inner English speaker. See you on our next deep dive.